Our invited speaker for this evening is Dr. Irma Alicia Velasquez Nimatu, the Executive Director of the Support Mechanism for Indigenous Peoples in Guatemala. As an anthropologist and a journalist, Irma has been in the vanguard of the fight for respect for the traditions and culture of the indigenous peoples of Guatemala. She is the first Quiche woman with a doctorate in social sciences in Guatemala, but prior to that study, she was a journalist and acquired multiple awards and was nationally known for her written and graphic publications. She received her PhD in anthropology and an MA in social anthropology at the University of Texas here in the United States in Austin. Dr. Velasquez Nimatu has published several books, including one called Indigenous People, State and Struggle for Land in Guatemala, Strategies of Survival and Negotiations in the Face of Global Inequality, and a second called The Small Indigenous Commercial Bourgeoisie of Guatemala, Social, Racial, and Gender Inequalities. In both of her books, and in the important work she does on the ground with dozens of indigenous and women's organizations in Guatemala, who she accompanies and nurtures, she offers her readers a framework for better understanding the complex dynamics of gender, race, and class within Guatemala today. Her work analyzes how Ladino, Mestizo, and indigenous peasants share a social class position, yet live within a racialized hierarchy that conditions their efforts to organize united fronts against class oppression. Her writing explores the complex challenges facing indigenous women within their families, communities, organizations, country, and transnational. In March of 2010, she joined local Guatemalan women's organizations and international feminists and observers in a tribunal of conscience for women survivors of sexual violence during the armed conflict. The organizers of that event had two key objectives. The first, to create a public space for women survivors to tell their stories and be heard by their fellow citizens and the state. And secondly, to lay the groundwork for a paradigmatic case of sexual violence as a weapon of war to be presented for prosecution in the Guatemalan courts. I'm happy to report that that case has recently been presented for the first time in those courts. During this two-day event, 8 Mayan and Ladino women testified, some for the first time in public, about their experiences of violence to an audience of approximately 800 people that included other women and members of the Guatemalan civil society, state officials, and a cross-section of the international community. The women who testified came forward despite the ongoing violence in the country and impunity for past crimes to tell their truths and to seek justice and social recognition for the violations of their human rights. Dr. Velasquez Nimatu was one of the expert witnesses in this trial, clarifying the systematic and collective nature of the sexual violence perpetrated against Mayan women. Thus, she argued it was neither sporadic nor random, but rather aimed at the whole-scale removal of indigeneity from the Guatemalan social and physical landscape. She demonstrated how systematic rape had produced a kind of, and I quote, cultural terror for indigenous women, through which they were dehumanized and delegitimized by those around them. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome Irma Alicia Velasquez Nimatu and her daughter Maria Aguilar here to Boston College this evening. Dr. Velasquez Nimatu's talk this evening is entitled Continuities and Discontinuities in Violence Against Mayan Women in Guatemala. Her remarks will be in English and followed by ample time for discussion and questions. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Velasquez Nimatu to Boston.
Good evening, everyone. It feels like a dream come true to be here at the Center of Human Rights and International Justice of the Boston College. When I accepted the invitation in April of this year, it became a personal challenge to come here. Today, I believe this is a wonderful opportunity to share the air, the life of this place with you, and especially to learn how to interact with each other so that we can keep moving forward from our own settings and create effective action for challenge using and testing the national and international legal framework to challenge the daily human rights violation that we face under the current international economic system. Today, hundreds of indigenous leaders and communities around the world experience persecution, displacement, and annihilation by the hands of multinational companies taking over indigenous territories, which have become a valuable lot due to the wealth of the natural resources held in their soil. In fact, you and I are here because we struggle and dedicate our work so that having access to a decent life doesn't remain the privilege of a few, but instead it becomes a right for all people. I owe my presence here to Dr. Brinton Lykes of Boston College and Dr. Alison Crosby of York University in Toronto. It was through their extensive research and accompaniment to the justice process in Guatemala, working with women and indigenous communities, that I met them, and they invited me to share with you some of the work I have been doing with indigenous women survivors of the most recent genocide of my country. In terms of logistical support, I would like to thank Team CARS, and also I want to thank Deborah Levinson Estrada for her long friendship and for her political commitment to my country. Tonight, I want to share with you some of my experiences as a Quiche woman, as an anthropologist, and as a journalist who has tried to understand how racism, sexual violence, and poverty combine during the Guatemala genocide. Specifically, I want to focus on how genocide has affected the lives of indigenous women, but also on the importance of community and activists, geared professional training, and its contribution and benefits to justice process. Guatemala is a small country in Central America, which is a bit smaller than the state of Tennessee, with 24 indigenous languages. But let me begin by telling you that what happened in Guatemala from 1960 to 1996 can be described as state terrorism, because under the pretext of national security, the state, through the army, carried out one of the most despicable and gruesome crimes against humanity, which included the sexual violation and labor exploitation of indigenous women all over the country. Tonight, however, I will discuss one case perpetrated against a small Quechua community, almost unknown, and located in the eastern part of the country called Sepur, situated in the department of Izabal. In 1982, under the presidency of General Efraín Ríos Montt, the army installed a military base in Sepur and executed and then disappeared the corpses of all men and some older children. Subsequently, all of the surviving widows of Sepur were subject to domestic and sexual slavery for 6 years. Until this day, given the level of the impunity in the national justice system and the complacency of the army, the victims have been unable to file complaints for these crimes in the courts. It was until exactly 3 weeks ago for that the first time after 30 years, 15 surviving Quiche women from Sepur, many elderly and sick, and almost all hiding their faces, but with profound dignity, narrated their lives and the lives of their people in front of the local judges. They are demanding justice for those killed, for those who were disappeared, and also for themselves after they were raped, repeatedly for several years. They also asked for justice for their surviving children who this day live in uncertainty and fear. These crimes took place with the context of an internal armed conflict that lasted 36 years from 1960 to 1996. As a Quiche activist, I acknowledge that my training in activist anthropology, aside from preparing me to carry out quality research, also taught me that I have a social responsibility to do what is useful to communities or groups with whom I work and support. The case of Sepur showed me the usefulness of activist anthropology and its diverse uses. Because as a tool for knowledge, it has multiple possibilities, from basic support to political process to technical support or vice versa. In my experience of working in indigenous and poor rural communities of Guatemala, I have found an affinity towards activist anthropology because I found that an anthropologist often has the job of an organizer or of a political and technical translator who helps highlight the difficulties of a community and interpret them using Western logic. Activist anthropology allows its users to show the technical achievements and knowledge that indigenous communities possess in a way that teaches the Western world how the other worlds that sometimes despises and discriminates against, create such knowledge and contribute to the contemporary world. In my experiences, the methodological and political work of the anthropologists can be valuable because in remote, rural, and poor communities there are technical, administrative, financial, and other limitations. Therefore, an academic engaged and in tune with grassroots and with the local leadership can help nurture the political discourse of organic leaders who, equipped with more arguments, can straight their demands before this day. This view also contributes to the strengthening of local leadership and grassroots groups who, by having more tools by means of research and critical analysis of their situation and of the national and international context, can help energize and straight their arguments before the state or the powerful groups that control the country and with whom they must negotiate almost always in a position of disadvantage. From this perspective of taking advantage of the usefulness of activist anthropology is how I approach this cruel and horrendous subject of rape and sexual violence against the women of Sepur. I must reiterate that this type of human rights violation were also experienced by thousands of indigenous women in my country, although we don't have exact numbers since many of them still remain silent. Now, I would like to contextualize my work. There is not that I didn't know of the countless atrocities and violations committed by the army against indigenous people during the genocide of the 1990s. In fact, all indigenous people live and survive the war differently. At the beginning of my professional career, I tried to approach the study of my country focusing on class differences with groups of indigenous comerciantes from my hometown, to understand the privileges and how their demands were used to support the demand of the poor indigenous majority. After a brief period, I began working with different rural indigenous communities who were struggling for access to farmland, with others were demanding the return of their land taken from them during the war. In both scenarios, I found a permanent oppression towards women, regardless of their class. My data, however, show that poor indigenous women were the least likely denouncing male violence. This led me to the research of the reproduction of racism, patriarchy, and capitalism with the Guatemala state and its impact on organization, as well as our urban and rural communities. I recognize that although I attempt to understand the multiple oppression indigenous women face, I had not analyzed the issue of sexual violence amongst armed conflict survivors. I did so until the late 2009, when I was invited by my College of Mujeres Transformando el Mundo, Unión Nacional de Mujeres Guatemaltecas, and the Equipo de Estudios Comunitarios y Acción Psicosocial, who asked me to write a cultural expert witness report of the Tribunal of Conscience of Women Survivors of Sexual Violence during the armed conflict. This event took place in Guatemala on the 4th and 5th of March 2010. Through this undertaking, I had access to a vast range of materials, including reports, interviews, videos, testimonials, research, and publication about the lives of indigenous women with different language groups who were raped during the decade of the 1980s in different regions of the country. Regarding the issue of sexual violence against indigenous women, the data from the document to which I had access exceeded the information contained in the Catholic Church True Commission report, Guatemala Nunca Más, and in the United Nations Commission for Historical Clarification report. I must admit that for me it was appealing to read and compare the information because the data details action carried out by depraved minds. I mean the action executed by soldiers, most of whom were indigenous, to the bodies of hundreds of indigenous women of all ages and regions were so cruel and so inhuman. With the documents in hand many times and with profound indignation, I wondered what social, political, economical, and cultural conditions were at play so that indigenous soldiers, often from the same linguistic community as the women, become the vicious executioners of their own sisters. Who was the process of internalization of the races, shaped and footed by the Guatemalan army? The answer to this question may be because the process of genocide ensured that indigenous men ignored the principle of their communal worldview and social network in exchange for the power that gangs and their commanders gave them. With weapons in hand, they took on the right to control, treat, kidnap, disappear, and kill men, the elderly and children, and to rape women for years. To what extent can war dehumanize men, in this case soldiers, a member of the infamous civil patrol, mostly indigenous, and push them to destroy the bodies as well as the physical and emotional lives of indigenous women? As an indigenous woman in this process hurt me. I felt that the abused women were my grandmother, my mother, or my aunts, because most were illiterate women, working women with various responsibilities within their communities and with many aspirations, who suddenly felt that with the arrival of the war to their communities, life changed. At all times, and knowing that they and I share the same indigenous identity made me question my own privilege and the extreme variation between their life and mine infuriated me. Regardless of my pain, I had to continue with my research, and I had to rely on the discipline of history to help me frame and understand that servitude, violence, racial discrimination, and violence against indigenous women who have been constant in Guatemala's history. I have come to realize that we cannot interpret sexual violence against indigenous women as non-historical facts, because then we cannot understand how in the 20th century the Guatemalan state, through the army, execute with complete impunity and without any sign of mercy crimes against humanity. In addition, it should be noted that sexual violence has been used in parallel to racial discrimination, and both have been used in tandem to achieve a more effective control on the bodies and minds of individual and collective lives of indigenous women. Therefore, racism and sexual violence against indigenous women have operated continuously. As I mentioned before, the present cannot be analyzed without its link to the past. The Spanish invasion of 1524 marked a starting point in the history of present-day Guatemala. At that time, indigenous women were converted into domestic slaves and sex slaves. We don't have an exact number that indicates how many indigenous women were separated from their places of origin, culture, and families, and who were forced to establish new villages for the benefit of the Spanish forces. For 3 centuries, during the colonial times, thousands of them lost their lives in the encomienda and repartimiento systems. And thousands never had the right to breastfeed their children because even that right was denied, and instead they were forced to nurse the children of the conquistadors' elite. 3 centuries later, racism and sexual violence were present during the Independencia movement from Spain, which did not mean freedom for indigenous women. On the contrary, independence never came to them and their communities. Forced labor requirements made women leave their families. They witnessed how their parents, husbands, and children were condemned to slavery on the plantation. The liberal era that began in 1871 and the introduction of the coffee did not mean any form of economic development for indigenous women either. Guatemala's entry into the global economic system through coffee export turned millions of indigenous women into cheap labor and their wives producing children needed to harvest coffee. And in the coffee plantation, living under slavery or semi-slavery condition, women continued suffering sexual violence. For a small group of local and foreign families, coffee became a green gold. But for indigenous women forced to harvest for several months every year of their lives, coffee meant a system of racial oppression and sexual violence that was hard to break for generations. The 20th century did not change the situation of indigenous women. Instead, and ironically, it was the beginning of one of the centuries where we noticed that we don't have an analysis of the level of sexual violence to which women were subjected. It was until very recently that we began collecting data, evidence, documents, and testimonials of the women survivors of the aggravated racism and rape that the Army committed during the armed conflict. However, there are still doubts about how racism and sexual violence operate against women before the war. There are states of which we know very little, and this is one of the critical gaps that history has yet to examine. After writing an expert witness report in 2010, I continue assisting the work of women organizations that promotes the first tribunal of conscience for women survivors of sexual violence during the armed conflict. And that's how I was asked to develop another expert report on the mass rape of 15 Quiche women carried out by members of various ranks of the Guatemalan army in the community of Sepur. The Guatemala state installed one of the 6 military bases of the region in Sepur, and this is where women were forced to do what they call service for the military, which included cleaning, preparing food for an average of 400 soldiers washing soldier clothes in the river and serving as a sexual slaves for the 6 years that the military base remained in the community. During the research process, I had access to many sources. I met with experts and other professionals who published on the subject women's violence. Also, I meet with women organizations that accompany the legal process. Most important, I had a great privilege of meeting and interview each of the 15 women. I know all them because I had read their complaints filed with the district attorney office. But seeing them in person and arriving to the community where they lived before and after the armed conflict was a privilege, but also emotional devastating. Listening to the details of the events along with their pain made me feel helpless against the justice system, including the blindness of racist judges who seek evidence in the bodies of women 30 years later to determine whether sexual violence was truly committed against them. The psychological wounds, the destruction of their communities, and the disappearance of murder of their husband or children are not enough. Judges are constantly demanding more scientific evidence and specific details about how and where the assaults and sexual abuse took place to determine the authenticity of their stories, and these are things women are unable to provide because of the time lapses, but also because their emotional state doesn't allow them to relive their lives in a specific detail. I met, interviewed, and shared with the women who decided to take the case to court. Their age ran from 52 to 75 years old. All the women I interviewed migrated from the Departamento of Alta Verapaz to Izabal as babies or adolescents, accompanying their parents or grandparents in search of arable land. According to their identification card, all were born in plantation. That is, they were daughters of small farmers who managed to break the colonial chains at least temporarily and gained independence by acquiring a piece of land in the department of Izabal. All were members of Quechua families dedicated to agriculture. All are monolingual, speaking only the Quechua language. None of the 15 women attend school. All are illiterate and continue to wear their regional clothes. In this process, I try to understand their life in key moments. First, before they were subject to sexual violence. Next, during the period when the actual sexual abuse took place. And last, the period after the signing of the peace accord in 1996, when they tried to speak but could not because the wounds were still fresh. At this later time, the women also feared a return of the violence because some of the civil patrollers who collaborate with the army were still living in the same community. The women also viewed the justice system as slow and centralized in the capital city. As I listened to their testimonies, all given in their mother language, Quechua, I needed the support of a translator, Olivia Tosh, a Quechua teacher who has worked on documenting human rights violations in that region. During all the testimonies, I saw them fall apart, and different times and with different intensity, because the effects and the pains of the sexual assault are still present in the memories and in their bodies. I witnessed how narrative their experience imply conjuring up the fact that disrupt and change their lives forever. For them, the army's arrival to Sepul was tragic in different aspects. It meant the destruction of the communal and family structure the disappearance of murder of the husband, children, father or brother and children, their temporary escape with their children to the mountains, and the agony and death of several of them due to lack of food or water. Soon after these atrocities, the women were subject to sexual slavery, constant rapes, individual and collective, and servitude. They also experienced a deprivation of their liberty, pregnancies, product of the rape, abortion, and subsequent venereal diseases. Above all, sexual violence suffered at the hands of the army kept them and their families from living a normal life. Their communal life was destroyed by the burning of their homes, the destruction of the traditional clothes, the slaughter of their domesticated animals, the burning of their crops, closing the school, destroying the cooperative, and closing the Catholic and Protestant churches. The women describes how the events made them feel like women who stopped having any value, and they felt they no longer deserved to live and did not want to live. For this and for many other reasons that are difficult for the women to explain is that some interviews were more intense and extensive than others. Throughout the testimonial process, I tried to respect the women's decision to either stop or continue with their interviews. I also pondered over the process of interviewing survivors of a bloody and racist internal armed conflict in which the action of the state and its executors remain unpunished. How does one document with all its complexity the effect of the war in the post-war era? Meanwhile, I have witnessed how many of these women are getting older, sick, and many others dying, all without seeing the men responsible for disappearance, torture, murder, abuses, rapes, harassment, kidnapping, and destruction of personal and collective honor, punished by the courts. For all these women, seeing that mid and high-rank officials who allow, facilitate, and promote these crimes are still free, while the low-ranking officials who have been identified by them continue living, in some cases in the same communities, with complete impunity and still with power, depends their trauma. One learned from anthropology that everything that is said, written, or published must be based on solid research that must be cross-referenced with data obtained from a serious fieldwork. A continuous participate observation of the social space with one works, and from an interaction as equal as possible with the women and men in the communities. However, the methodology does not teach us how to deal with emotion, the sense of social consciousness, and anger that overlaps when one works documenting crimes against humanity and when one shares the same racial identity as the survivors. In this case, they as a Quechua and me a Quiche. We share a common identity as Maya people from Guatemala. So far, I don't have the answer to this dilemma. All I know is that these are some questions I've asked myself and are part of what has been putting my anthropological skill at the surface of my indigenous brother and sister in my country, where sexual and racial violence against indigenous women continue to be used as tools of oppression. The study for the expert witness report of the case of Sepur took place from December 2011 to June 2012. During this time, I identified numerous acts of racism and sexual violence committed against women. These acts were part of a series of crimes committed by members of the army instilled in the area. Based on the testimony, document, and statement, I identified 4 different types of violence that disrupt the individual and community life of women after the military base was installed in the community. First, a group of women were raped and then murdered by the army. Unfortunately, it's not possible to identify the exact number of women massacred because this requires a broader process of multidisciplinary research, documentation, and exhumation of mass graves. Second, a group of widows remaining in the community. These women were forced into the sexual slavery and forced to serve in the camp between 6 to 8 months. Domestic service in the detachment included cleaning facilities, making food for members of the army, and washing uniforms. Sexual assault was perpetrated in the base, in homes, near the rivers, or in areas close to the community. In short, women in the community faced death, rape, cultural and economic destruction, and emotional and physical abuse. All of these crimes altered their cultural identity, and the collective values of their community were destroyed. Third, another group of widows ran away to the mountains, and they escaped from the military base, but before fleeing they were raped, and anytime they came down from the mountains, they were detained and raped again by the soldiers. Most women stayed in the mountains, and while they escaped the abuse, they did so at the cost of losing some of all their children due to the lack of food. And fourth, all women who remained in the community and those who came down from the mountains in search of food or seeking information about the whereabouts of family members or who decided to reside with relatives or neighbors were also sexually abused at different times. This violence modified or destroyed their communities, their extended families, their system of authority, system of property, production, construction, and reproduction of medical knowledge, and their spiritual solidarity. In other words, physical, emotional, and sexual violence perpetrated on the bodies of these women marked a turning point of their lives. Moreover, the presence of the army involved a constant damage to their already destroyed family economy. Many times, they were forced to acquire with their own money supplies to serve the soldiers because the army did not always provide it. In addition, women who were living in the community after completing their military service were still required to bring 6 pounds of corn daily to the military detachment using their own money. And under the threat of death, they also had to look for firewood and invest part of their day buying corn, making tortillas, and delivering them to the military base, even if it meant starvation for them and their children. Therefore, besides the emotional and physical abuse, there was economic exploitation, which is why are suing the state of damages. Currently, all women interviewed for the witness testimony live in poverty. They state that their conditions are similar or worse than before the war. They show and describe their houses and shacks made of wood with tin roofs or natural materials of the region. Most adult women show signs of malnutrition, while the younger ones look older than their real age. In the interviews, the women explained that to them the war meant eating only once a day, and when they were lucky, twice. The few women who remained have their husband at home to help with household expenses, while those who are alone rely on what their surviving children can afford to give them. In terms of the perpetrators and the role of the state, the declaration makes evident that the army commanders, in the collaboration with the civil patrols, were responsible of the forced disappearance of the women's husband. However, crimes executed by members of the military, in some cases with the help of the civil patrol, were not committed in an isolated social and cultural vacuum. Instead, they were carried out with a context of the militarization of the country promoted since 1954 by the counter-revolutionary state and with the support of the US government, the Catholic hierarchy, and agro-export elites. Under the mask of an anti-communist strategy and as a part of the Cold War, the Guatemala state implemented a campaign of terror which included the physical extermination of any person or community they believed to be communist or communist sympathizer. Taking into account these and other elements, such as historical hatred and fear against indigenous rebellions, one can observe the complex national and international conditions which allow members of the army to act with cruelty and impunity against indigenous communities, especially those who were seeking legal titles to the land. When the armed conflict escalated, Ladino landowners sought to ensure the residents of Sepur who did not have legal ownership of their lands through their communal organization as church groups, cooperatives, and land committees, did not join insurgent groups operating in the western part of the country, despite how absurd and unpractical an alliance of residents of Sepur with insurgency groups operating at the opposite end of the country. The army decided to take control of the community by repressive means. The record showed that a fierce practice was the selective killings of community leaders. When the conflict between army and rebel escalated, the killings in the communities became collective, even if the community never met the rebel forces. Entire regions were militarized, bringing indiscriminate terror through desapariciones, collective murders, and rape, in other words, genocide. Through carefully analyzing the evidence of how soldiers were recruited, first it is clear that there is a gap that explains the profound transformation experienced by indigenous soldiers, most of who were recruited by force, who play a key role in these horrific acts. As Margarita and several other women remember, some of the soldados were Quechua, and she was able to identify them because they spoke the same language. Second, there needs to be an analysis of the role of the civil patrollers who were members of the same community and who were under the Army's command during the different stages of the armed conflict. Women speak about the terror civil patrol is still in the community, but it is still necessary to examine the action and impact of these patrols in communities like Sepur, because they managed to restore their life after the war ended. Therefore, we need to analyze and understand the transformation that indigenous men experienced and find out what led to them to carry out orders to kidnap, torture, and murder their brother and sister in their own communities. And third, based on the narratives, one can deduce that severe and long process of inequality in specific social spaces and groups, such as the army, enable and facilitate soldiers to act against their own communities. Because in the midst of the extreme poverty, even if some were forced, they also benefit them from small or disproportionate shares of power. The 15 women expressed that for them, the reason why the army installed 6 bases in the region without a single Grupo Guerrillero operating in the area was because their husbands were struggled to legalize their land. They also say that the region's landowners negotiate with the army the installation of the military detachment. First to provide security to the plantation and later to evict and take away the land from peasants without land titles. Doña Manuela says, civil patrollers along with landowners prepare a list with the name of the men who should be taken. Landowners achieved their goals since plantations dedicated to the cultivation of the African palm surround the community today. Doña Demesia stated, the war came because the landowners, the rich, because the peasants were asking to legalize the land where we live, but the landowners wanted those lands, and because we didn't leave, the army took the men. For defending our land, the army took our husband. All of the women who have brought their case to court lost their husband, but some also lost their children. The most dramatic case is that Doña Rosario, who witnessed all for her children die from hunger and malnutrition one by one when they were 4, 3, and 1 years old when she went into the hiding. There is also the case of Doña Antonia, who 3 of 5 children died in the mountains. All agree that they lost their community. They all say that the life during those 6 years was imposed by the army, who closed the cooperative, the school, and fired the teachers. Their children could not learn to read and write, nor could they buy or sell items because the market was closed. The army also killed the Catholic catechist and evangelical pastor. Consequently, the evangelical and Catholic church closed and Quechua spiritual rites were paid. Doña Candelaria said, no doctor arrived during those years because the army did not allow it. So they feed on roots and used herbs for medicine. For all the community became a ghost town. With no husband and no help from anybody, all women remained in extreme poverty. Doña Rosario was never able to recover his house and now lives with her mother. All women lost their crops and all animals they owned and were denied the right to grow food and cook for their own. As Doña Rosa said, making food was interpreted by the soldier as a crime because we were accused for preparing food for the guerrillas. Although Doña Magdalena points out, she never saw or imagined what a guerrillero looks like. At the estate, they say, we slept without eating. Doña Demesia summarized this time as the time where they left us without house, clothes, food, animals, and without a husband. We survived from what we were given from the generosity of the neighbors. In the middle of the war, we had to beg for food because we were out in the street without anything or anyone. Doña Maria expressed that during the war, I stayed with a few pieces of clothing. I washed and dried them while I was bathing in the river. In short, all women expressed that neither them nor their late husband were armed and that they had never seen a gun. All they owned was their farming tools. Therefore, the case of Sepul refers to a group of unarmed families who were brutally attacked for years using racism and false ideological grounds. Doña Maria, for example, says, soldiers raped her the same day, kidnapping her husband in 1982. To make things worse, none of the women received psychological care by the state, not even after the signing of the peace accord in 1996. Of the 15 women interviewed, all were sexually abused at different times, but 4 did not have to serve the army because they fled into the mountains. Those who did not fulfill these orders were punished, tortured, and murdered. Today, the 15 women are sick. Some have diabetes, others have heart problems, malnutrition, problems of their reproductive system, as well as emotional problems as feeling of deep shame because of rapes. And they experience mental anguish when remembering the state of their lives. They are also the subject of ridicule and gossip. They suffer nightmares, depression, and loss of memory, among other issues. As Doña Magdalena said, now I know that none of the women in the community have a happy lives because we were all raped by the army, by our own government. I feel angry, hurt. I hate those who did that to me. While Doña Cecilia sometimes experiences nightmare, stress, and she thinks the soldiers are coming back to laugh and make fun of them, saying, "You, poor little women, you are alone with your children, poor things. Now you have to care for your children because your husbands are not coming back." In their own manner, all women express that their religion and spirituality was severely damaged because they were forbidden to practice their Quechua rites. Go to Catholic or Evangelical church. Doña Rosa stated that during the war, when the priests came to the community and tried to celebrate Mass, soldiers threw bombs and then the church became a temporary shelter where families were protecting themselves along with the priests and nuns. 12 out of the 15 women who testified received financial support from the National Reparation Program, which was a symbolic amount. 3 of them are still waiting to receive some economic support. They all explained that their family economy deteriorated during and after the war and that they could never again recover economically. Doña Candelaria said that the life changed when they got the news that the soldiers had arrived, and that's when the fear began. For Doña Vicenta, this was the time when the army destroyed their community with mass disappearances. What the women experienced and can be described by the question asked by Doña Magdalena, why did this happen to us? And she answered herself, perhaps because we are poor. While Doña Vicenta adds, also because indigenous and mestizo soldiers saw us as indigenous women. That's why they did what they wanted when they raped us. We could not defend ourselves because they were showing us their weapons. That's why we let them abuse us. Cecilia adds, the army does not value us as people. For them, we were only Indians who could not read or write. We were godless in their eyes. Therefore, they abuse us over and over again. While Doña Demesia expressed that past actions have implications in their present life and that of their families, she said that the government has not provided justice for disappearance of their loved one. For her, their only crimes was living near landowners. To understand why the Quechua women of Sepur faced sexual violence that was so vicious and inhuman, I propose that a fundamental pillar that must not to be neglected in the analysis of these abuses is the structural and historical racism, which has been fundamental in the construction of the Guatemalan state. The social and political construct has operated for centuries to control and exploit indigenous people. Racism as a social construction provides privileges and reinforces an unequal social structure. Therefore, racism is used as an oppression tool that the Latin American elite reproduce and exercise through the control of the state. Finally, sexual violence against indigenous women, as shown in their testimony, must be analyzed with a larger historical and social context. This allows us to understand that sexual violence, physical violence, and servitude experienced by these women was not a new nor an isolated practice of the state, but a regular practice in the long history of the life of indigenous women. In other words, the human rights violence against indigenous women during the armed conflict were the continuation of an illegal practice that has never been brought to trial, much less punished in the history of Guatemala. That is why to understand Guatemala and its atrocities, crimes against humanity, particularly against indigenous women and men, it is necessary to understand that racism and sexual violence have been practiced simultaneously. The data collected in the Sepur case form part of the larger acts of genocide committed in Guatemala. This case only dealt with the human and cultural destruction of an ethnic village, the perverted sexual violence, the constant labor exploitation, and the slavery against all Quechua women of Sepur. For justice's sake, this case presents powerful evidence to put together a solid case before the Guatemalan courts, so that the state finally accepts responsibility for these crimes in Sepur and hopefully for other Maya villages as well. The evidence should also contribute to that of surviving victims. Women, their families, and communities can obtain financial compensation. What is being struggled generally is that sexual violence against poor rural indigenous women does not remain unpunished, silenced, or hidden under the cloak of impunity, but instead the cases can be analyzed, brought and tried in courts and punished to set a precedent for the country and for the humanidad. Only then we can say never again. Finally, I would like to share with you some photographs. Finally, I would like to share with you some photographs that were taken 3 weeks ago during the women's testimony at court. This presentation is a tribute to them.
Thank you very much. Irma Alicia will now answer some of your questions. If you would ask them slowly, please.
My questions are in regard to what you did say rather than what you didn't say. My questions are in regard to what you didn't say rather than what you did say. I understand you focused on the suffrage of women during the Civil War. You failed to mention Major Tito anywhere in your remarks, okay? And
a groundbreaking reoccurrence just happened this past October 4th with the massacre at Totonicapán. And I question as to why you're not talking about it, why you're not making a reference to history repeating itself. If you can address it, I would appreciate it.
Can we have 2 or 3 more, and then she'll answer together? Another question? Okay. Oh, Saki.
Hi, thank you for coming. My question is about, I have a couple questions, but I guess my biggest question is what kind of help do you see as most effective coming from outsiders that are coming into your community to assist you in some of the challenges that you faced? What kind of help have you found or would you find most effective?
One more?
Thank you so much for sharing with us. I guess my question is, you mentioned the truth commissions that were done both by the UN and by the Catholic Church in Guatemala. And I guess I'm just curious how, after 2 of these commissions, what have they accomplished? What were the benefits of them, if you see any, and what were the limitations that you think? Because you mentioned that the research that you're doing is not included anywhere in them. So what positive things came out of them, and what drawbacks kept them from maybe being more complete?
Okay.
Okay, as you see, for me it's difficult to speak in English, so I would like to respond in Spanish, and Brito will help me to traduce my response. La primera pregunta es, ¿por qué no hablo de Totonicapán? ¿Por qué no hago referencia a Totonicapán?
First question is about why I didn't reference the recent experiences in Totonicapán in Guatemala.
Estamos de acuerdo los indígenas que fue otra masacre.
We as indigenous people are in agreement that that was another massacre.
Pero fue una masacre en tiempos de posguerra.
But it was a massacre in a time which is labeled as a post-war time.
Usted ha tocado un punto importante porque esta masacre va a ser un parteaguas en la historia de Guatemala.
You made a very important point, because this massacre is another example of another point, a difficult point in the history of Guatemala.
Sin embargo, quise enfocarme en el tema que he trabajado más de cerca, que es el caso de Sepur y las 15 mujeres que han tenido el valor y la fuerza para declarar en un país en donde las mujeres indígenas no tenemos voz.
So despite the importance of this event, I wanted to focus my talk tonight in the work that I have been doing, the important work of documenting the voices of these 15 women and the experiences they had in Sepul, and the courage that they showed to speak out in a context of impunity in the ongoing struggle against injustice in Guatemala.
Si pudieron entender bien mi pronunciación, estas hermanas vivían en pobreza, viven en pobreza, pero además de eso, son mujeres que les negaron hasta el derecho de vivir y encima fueron esclavizadas y obligadas a servir al ejército sin poder tener la posibilidad de defenderse o de denunciarlo, porque era su propio Estado el que estaba cometiendo estos crímenes en contra de ellas.
If you understood my English, I wanted to capture for you that these are women who lived in extreme poverty and who live today in extreme poverty. These are women who were forced by their own state, by their own government, to live as sexual slaves. They were regularly abused in their own bodies, And yet they have resisted, they have spoken out, they are telling their story, and this is the story I wanted to tell you this evening.
Los rostros de las mujeres que están hablando están cubiertos.
The faces of the women that are speaking are covered.
Esto es increíble que pase en un país que habla de democracia.
And this is really unbelievable that this would be going on in a country that calls itself a democracy.
Y yo creo que este es como el reto que tenemos de llevar estos casos concretos al sistema de justicia.
And I think this is the challenge that we face, to bring these specific cases to justice.
Y yo creo que lo de Totonicapán nos está mostrando que ya no se va a permitir que ocurra lo mismo que ocurrió con estos casos.
And I think that what happened in Totonicapán is an expression that the country is not going to permit that the government do what it did in the past, in the present today.
Así que yo estoy de acuerdo con usted. Tenemos que conectar todos estos casos en la larga historia de la violencia en Guatemala.
So I'm in agreement with your point that we need to connect all of these cases, that we need to make the connections between what happened recently in Totonicapán with the larger story and history of Guatemala.
Y acerca de su pregunta, ¿qué puede ser lo más, cómo se puede ayudar de manera más efectiva desde afuera hacia casos como estos?
And with regard to your question about what can you do, those who are outside of the situation or who come from outside of the situation to accompany or to help with the types of cases that I'm describing.
Y tal vez podemos encontrar muchas formas,
I think that there are probably many different forms.
pero yo creo que algo que es importante en este país es el poder que tiene el gobierno de Estados Unidos sobre estados pequeños como Guatemala.
But I think the important statement to make in a country like this one is the power that the United States has against or relative to small countries such as Guatemala.
No parece real, pero el voto de ustedes, por quien ustedes voten y quien dirige este país, determina muchas de las formas de cómo opera la diplomacia y los intereses de la diplomacia dentro de nuestros países.
It seems almost unbelievable to say, but the way in which you all vote in this country and the person who you vote for determines the relationships between countries, and in particular the possibilities or the lack of possibilities in my country, the country of Guatemala.
Yo creo entonces que tenemos que pensar en las formas grandes de apoyo y también en las formas estratégicas y en las formas más pequeñas de apoyo.
So I think we have to think at least three different levels. We have to think in the large-scale issues, and then we have to think of strategies that we can engage in together, and then we have to think in the small-scale interventions and accompaniments.
Y la pregunta del compañero acerca de qué ha sido útil de los dos documentos que se hicieron, el que hizo Naciones Unidas y el que hizo la Iglesia Católica y sus vacíos referente a estos temas.
And the third question that had to do with the Truth Commissions, the one that was directed by the Catholic Church and the one that was negotiated by the United Nations, what was the utility of these, or to what ends did they serve?
La primera utilidad, o digamos, la importancia de estos dos documentos radica en que dieron a conocer lo que el mundo no creía que ocurrió en Guatemala.
So the fundamental importance of those documents was that those documents spoke about what happened in Guatemala, truths that the rest of the world did not want to believe.
Fue una manera de trabajar con testimonios, de trabajar con sobrevivientes y de mostrar casos concretos en los cuales la mayoría de las violaciones las cometió el ejército, pero también hubieron violaciones de la guerrilla.
It was a process through which we could, the teams could work with testimonies and with the lived experiences of people who suffered intense violations at the hands of the government, but also violations that were committed by the guerrilla forces.
Los vacíos, bueno, hay muchos vacíos legales, ¿verdad? Digamos, en el tema de la persecución en contra de muchos de quienes ordenaron estos crímenes.
There are many weaknesses in these reports, particularly legal weaknesses, particularly vis-a-vis the people who gave the orders for these crimes.
Y tal vez en el tema de las violaciones a las mujeres indígenas es donde más vacíos existen.
And perhaps in the topic that we're discussing this evening, that is the violations against indigenous women, there are the most weaknesses in these two reports.
El reporte de Naciones Unidas habla de 1.400 violaciones a mujeres indígenas.
The United Nations report talks about 1,400 violations against indigenous women.
Pero ahora, en la etapa de posguerra, que se está trabajando con muchas comunidades, el número sobrepasa esta cantidad que tienen los dos reportes.
But today, in the work that's going on in indigenous communities throughout the country, it's very clear that the number of violations is much greater than that number.
Aún los números que se están recuperando ahora en términos de mujeres violadas nunca va a ser el número real, porque muchas mujeres ya murieron.
But despite the work that's going on now and the recovery of information, we're never going to actually get the full story of the numbers of women who were raped, because many of these women have died.
Y otras, como yo lo dije en la presentación, han guardado silencio.
And others, as I said in my presentation, have continued to remain silent about the experiences.
Otro vacío es el tema de los niños indígenas que fueron sacados, arrebatados y llevados por el ejército después de haber cometido masacres. Hubieron niños que no fueron masacrados, pero sí fueron tomados por el ejército.
The other theme that was not well documented in those reports is the whole issue of children. Children who, after the massacres had taken place, were not killed, but were actually kidnapped by the military.
El caso más dramático es el de Rabinal, en donde después de cometer una de las masacres, la masacre de Río Negro, el ejército se llevó más de 40 niños en los helicópteros.
One of the most dramatic cases is the massacre that took place in Rio Negro and Rabinal, and we know that the military actually kidnapped at least 40 children that were taken away in helicopters.
Los otros niños que vieron y que fueron testigos y que hoy son hombres y mujeres que están entre los 40 años, están tratando de indagar qué pasó con los otros niños que eran sus hermanos o que eran sus vecinos.
The young children who witnessed this event, who are today adults in the decade of they're 40 years old or thereabouts, are trying to recover those stories and to recover information about what happened, and are searching for their friends or their siblings.
Otro vacío grande es la explotación económica a la que sometieron a los sobrevivientes. Esto los dos reportes no lo abordan con amplitud.
Another weakness in the documents is that they do not take up the economic exploitation and suffering that occurred to the communities that were affected and to the people who survived the massacres and the violations.
Muchos de los sobrevivientes, como las mujeres de Sepur, pero también en otras comunidades, tuvieron que prestar servicios al ejército a costa de no dar de comer a sus hijos o a costa de buscar leña para el ejército, de conseguir jabón, de conseguir otra serie de cosas. Esto los reportes no lo recogieron.
Many of the survivors who were raped and then had to go into service or sexual servitude to the military were forced to work for the military, to go and seek wood, to go and make soap, to provide them with food, substances, at the cost of taking care of their own children and their own families. And none of this economic exploitation is discussed in the documents.
Otro vacío es el tema de la espiritualidad indígena. Este tema no lo abordan los dos informes. O sea, ¿qué significó para los pueblos indígenas que sus líderes espirituales fueran asesinados? Pero también, qué significó que no pudieran practicar su espiritualidad por temor a ser asesinados.
And the other theme that was not touched upon at all in these documents were the violations against the indigenous spirituality. What did it signify for these communities and for these individuals that their spiritual leaders were massacred and killed? What did it signify for these communities and for these individuals that they were not allowed to practice their indigenous spirituality, prevented from practices because they feared for their lives if they were to engage in these practices?
Bueno, podríamos seguir hablando de otros vacíos que existen, pero yo quisiera dejarlo ahí e invitarlos a que lean los reportes y los comparen también con lo que se está haciendo en la época de posguerra, que puede complementar estos vacíos de la historia.
I think that we could continue to talk about the weaknesses of the two reports, but I'd like to leave it with those ideas and also suggest to you that you read the documents as important documentation of what happened, but that you compare them to the type of research that I've described this evening, the research that's being conducted in the post-conflict moments, which is amplifying those documents and looking in more depth at some of the issues that were not discussed in them. Bueno, yo pienso que ya hay una más. No, aquí hay una más, si se puede.
As a doctorate in anthropology that you have, and you've chosen to use your skills in your doctorate to generate knowledge to change the world, do you feel isolated?
Bueno, yo creo que es, bueno, yo traté un poco de poner aquí, es difícil ser indígena, ser mujer y tratar de apoyar procesos de justicia social en un país como Guatemala, donde todos los días nuestra vida es una vida que no vale nada. Porque no importa que yo pueda tener un PhD, para la élite de Guatemala, yo solo soy una india más.
It is difficult and it is isolating because as an indigenous woman who chooses to do the kind of work that I've described here, an indigenous woman who has a PhD, for the elite of Guatemala, I am just one more Indian. Thank you very, very much. Thank you all for coming. I know there are many people from the Guatemalan community and from Guatemala who are here tonight. I would like to particularly thank you for coming and invite you to spend some time with us, have something to drink